All right, everyone. Welcome back on the gravel this week with your hosts, Raven and Oliver, looking dapper in red as ever for your video watchers today. And,
but it was not a red weekend.
It was not a red weekend.
It was a blue one.
It was a blue weekend.
Bit of orange in there, too.
Ooh, you're getting ahead of ourselves. You are correct in the fact that there was some orange and blue this weekend. But let's start it off this week with a little Lando update. Not him winning the race, but we're jumping the gun on that. Last week we noted that he had a little cut on his face, and he's okay. The tape around his face was just overkill, I guess. It was a really, really small cut, but it was a lucky cut. So
I thought we might have Pato Award in a McLaren this week.
But
there's in time.
Your voice is already rough.
Yeah, Raven's going to be the star of the show today. Kind of losing my voice, so we're going to let him take most of the stuff today.
I am going to try to let him talk as much as he can, but I will be doing most of the speaking this week. But on Monday, we remembered and celebrated the life of the legend Roland Ratzenberger, who is said to always have a smile on his face. So let's take a moment for that legend. After that, we had 2 days later in the same race weekend, we also lost one of the greatest racers of all time in Ayrton Senna. I mean, if you haven't seen the Senna documentary, I would just go watch that if you want to just really good view into his life. Obviously, it's not going to be a perfect overview of his life, but it highlights all the really good things that he accomplished.
I mean, and if you haven't seen the craziness, there was the 94 Imola GP. That was a wild weekend. He
was so talented, and we always keep them in our thoughts. So
absolutely.
After that, we had Ferrari finally announce that there would be some blue on the car, and everyone was believing, not just us, everyone was believing that this was going to be a blue car like the Dynaco from Cars, And they
hinted at it so often.
They did. They were posting every teaser available of the car in
the old
beautiful
60s,
blue.
All blue, and we got one of the worst looking special liveries I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was disappointing in the fact that there was really, I wouldn't even call it a secondary color. I would say it was like a tertiary, but
16 HP logos.
Oof.
Like it was crazy.
And they got that logo like sponsor placement well done with him spinning out in qualifying. So, it was a fun weekend, but definitely not what we were hoping for.
It was still decent. I don't want to say it was bad.
No, it wasn't. But it definitely did not live up to the hype that they were preparing. Of course. The teasers were so well done that the product majorly under-delivered, which...
And then you have the V-carb as the counter where they just dropped it. It was sick.
The V-carb car looked really, really good. The poster that you sent me also was super, super sick. So
yeah, Williams did a special Grand Theft Auto poster for Miami, which was really nice.
On Wednesday this week, it was reported by multiple sources that ex-Haas team boss Gunther Steiner is suing his former employees for violating the employment agreement by not paying certain parts of his commissions, as well as selling merchandise that still has his likeness on it. And, in America, especially for an American team, you can't do that.
I think it's fair.
Look at other sports. Like the moment they're traded, you pull their jerseys or you put them on sale and just to get rid of the inventory that you do have. But
of course,
you're not continuously selling those afterwards.
I think Gunther is definitely in the right for that.
Absolutely. And that's only in the early stages, so we'll keep an eye out for any updates on that.
I mean, in the sense now he is his own brand.
Yes, especially now that he is not with a team and he, like you said, is his own brand. Lawrence Stroll is apparently also in early talking stages to sell up to 25% of his stake in Aston Martin's F1 team to the U.S. private equity firm Arctos Partners. I don't know what they do.
Never
heard of them. He's just trying to get as much money as possible to fail at getting Adrian Newey. So,
yeah, and I feel like Newey has already stated he doesn't want to go to Aston Martin.
Yeah, he said it like 3 times that he does not want to go to Aston Martin. And okay, that's fine. The Aston Martin fan inside of me dies a little, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what are you going to do? Not nothing you can really force to do.
It's fair.
Speaking of the devil, it was confirmed by the legendary designer that he is stepping away from the team in a month.
100%.
100% true.
Confirmed.
What this means for the teams that want him. He currently has a no racing clause for a year, so he cannot join a team for a year. But if he does join a team, let's say the moment he can in a year's time, he would still be able to work on the 2026 spec cars, which is the most important, I would say, acquisition aspect of him.
Absolutely, it is.
Just because, there's only 2 more years in these regs, so it's kind of, I don't want to say a lost hope to work on them, but definitely not your main focus moving forward.
Absolutely.
I mean, he himself has said that he's in no rush to work and he has no current ideas as of now. But overall, what are you going to do? The man's pretty old. He's worked in the sport for so long. I think he deserves a little break.
And if you've seen, the thing that's gotten me is there's a clip going around with Lewis Hamilton on Media Day on Thursday talking about
Charles
Adrian
said
Newey.
it too.
Yeah, dude.
Both Ferrari drivers.
But
and
Lewis
he commented on it.
Lewis gave his trademark look where he was like, "Oh, I would love that," and then kind of smirked at the camera, and that makes me feel like he knows, he's done this in the past.
Yeah,
with him going to Mercedes or something like that.
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of reports that he's just a signature away from joining the team with Ferrari.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's a smoking gun to say.
I don't either.
There.
I still think we're very early in kind of talking stages.
I don't know. Overall, I mean, he wants to take a break, obviously, but I'm gonna shout out the F1 I think it's the Red Flag pod. Shout out those guys for this point, but he's just gonna be sitting and thinking there for a year.
That's probably good for him too.
Oh my god, dude, he's gonna cook so hard.
He's gonna cook.
The first design he brings out is going to be
that, and it's I don't know. He also has a lot of time to just think about what he wants to do.
Yeah. Moving on from that, we had the announcement of
12
members of Congress, of U.S. Congress, have written a letter to Liberty Media demanding answers on Andretti's rejection into the sport. And now, the one thing that really stood out to me about this was the fact that the congressmen are arguing that this breaks American antitrust laws, which is the biggest joke in the world with how many monopolies are in the American economy. Yeah. But we're not going to talk about that because...
I was going to say, you have to understand Liberty is also an American company.
Yes.
So that's why this has some sort of weight,
issue.
I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean... They just want answers, which is completely fair in that position of, having everything you need and getting support from some people on the grid to join. Why aren't they? But depending on how this kind of plays out is really going to show how trustworthy and liable the FIA and Liberty Media are. So this is just something to kind of keep an eye on. And if it does... move forward randomly into the fact that Andretti joins in the next specs, it would be very interesting. So, yeah, that's just something to brood about. But apparently,
I think we're looking more at 2028 now. I feel like that's more realistic.
I don't know.
I've heard reports of it. So,
okay,
we'll get there eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we'll join in the turn of the decade.
Yeah, absolutely.
6 years, bro. That's a while from now, but so much will be happening in the world. Apparently, Williams has asked the FIA to approve Kimi Antonelli for joining the sport as soon as Imola, meaning that this race today, Miami, could have been Logan's last race of the season. Now,
Ever.
And the season.
Essentially,
but he could come back. You never know.
That's true.
But this has been a talking point that we've kind of noted on previous episodes. And overall, I find it, the more we hear about it, the less likely I think it's going to happen, just because it's been such a talking point now for a while that we really haven't gotten an answer or any hints or any...
And like I've said, they didn't break the rules for Colton Herta. They won't do it for Antonelli.
Yeah. And it's like 3 or 4 parties that have to vote on it overall if he can drive in there. So I don't know. I find that really strange. I think that's going to be a weird one. But a lot of them are saying that it could happen. People believe that he will be joining Williams and racing at Imola in 2 weeks, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it was also important to know that Mercedes didn't do this. It was actually Williams who put the request in, which also is another shot at the Logan Sargent confidence graph. So I don't know. I'm kind of worried for him, especially with what happened this weekend.
Yes. And this kind of points out to say that Antonelli could be taking a George Russell kind of route to Mercedes.
Which is okay.
Which is, like, I'm not bashing on it.
I feel like G. Russ put in a lot of experience. He gained a lot from Williams.
Yeah, but I don't think that's
terrible,
Kimi Antonelli's.
He had terrible teammates, but
true. But I don't think that's Kimi Antonelli's first choice at making it into the sport. Other news that we had this week, we had the F1 Academy announce another Netflix docuseries. This one about the F1 Academy, obviously. But take your takes on this. I have mine. I think it's
not a fan.
We can get there, but yes, that is
a
short-winded way of saying it. That is great radio, by the way. I think it's going to be cool and a great way to introduce the audience, similar to what they did with DTS. But people also meme and just overall shit on DTS as a joke.
Yeah.
In the fact of it's only aimed for American viewers mainly. A lot of people you can try to disargue that, but I think it was mainly made to bring more Americans to the sport.
And it worked.
And it did. And for the F1 Academy, this is something that I think, since they're so small as well, it will help grow and, get people to know who the drivers are more, get to know their personalities, get to know those teams.
So just getting eyes on them is the most important thing.
Yeah, and so we can't hate on it for them trying to get more eyes on it, but I can hate on it for them just trying to pump out money makers like this. And what I really think that's going to happen in a few years is there's going to be a MotoGP version of this. And you can take the Drive to Survive kind of outline of how that works and, what you want to do to make a show that's interesting. I personally don't like it because of how much bending of the truth there is behind of it to make it as interesting as possible. I find that takes huge credibility out of the sport, and you start going into bias into how you want people to be seen, which is not fair.
Which is why I think the docu-series on Formula 2 on F1 TV is the best, I guess, Formula racing
reality show.
I don't even want to say reality show. I mean, it's kind of full honesty. There's no bending of the truth, anything. It is very descriptive, eye-opening. It's to me, it feels like what DTS wants to be. But they have to make it dramatic. So it sucks.
I don't know. I made a point that I think a show based on like the Hard Knocks, the Detroit Lions one. I think a show like on a WEC team or a rally team based on that would be so interesting. And
I would love to see that just sense of WEC.
That would be so cool just to see, as like you only see so much about it, but to really see what happens inside of the teams going into, 24 hours of Le Mans or 6 hours of Spa and all the prep that needs to be done on the track. I think that would be super, super interesting for racing fans. I don't care what kind of racing.
There's so much more going into it. You're on the track for so much longer. Yeah.
Think about
you
rally.
have to prep so much. Rally
would be an awesome one.
All of those splits over the whole weekend, like
22 stages usually. It's crazy. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that would be a really cool, just kind of way of reaching these fans without copying, pasting a format that's already worked.
Don't copy Drive to Survive. Please.
They are going to copy Drive to Survive. I saw this while we were prepping today before the race started. But Jenson Button is calling for a format shakeup to help with the predictability pattern in F1 right now. and we were talking to someone about this who's not as big of a fan as us, but they pointed out that it's really hard to get into this sport because you have the same person winning a race over and over and over again. And yes, it does get boring. We've talked about that. But even Max today at his post-conference says, racing is winning and losing. You get used to it. And that's as a bare bone, just kind of Dutch quote, it's pretty accurate. And you can't hate Max just as the same way that people can't hate Lewis for his dominance.
Because it's the odds. It's engineering.
It is
over everything.
That's the thing too. Is it's not just a racing competition; it's an engineering competition. So, I don't know, but I think the idea of switching up the format, especially on sprint weekends, only doing
Jensen
sprint
wanted
weekends.
to get rid of practice. Period.
I disagree with that. I think practice.
I do as well.
I think practice is important, but if you have sprint weekends, get rid of practice and make sprint quali and the sprint race.
That is your practice.
That is your practice. So now you have...
Because you have two different Park Ferme sessions.
Yeah. And so the idea of teams kind of, okay, are you going to go for points now, or are you going to try to get as much information as possible going into the race tomorrow? I think that is super interesting and would really shake up how the sprints even are. I don't think we would see, Max winning every single one. I think you would see a lot more of like Oscar and George Russell, maybe even a sneaky Haas or
even them standing on the podium.
Yeah, just like stuff like that where they're running such extreme setups just to try, and then you can reset to something that you're more comfortable with and predictable, maybe that the other car drove.
Yeah.
It's just a really cool idea that I have never really thought of, but
Neither
I
have
genuinely think that would be a cool way of switching things up during. I mean, especially not every week of the year.
Also, I guess to support his point, I do think in a regular weekend, 3 practice sessions is a lot.
You have a whole day of practice.
I think you need 2. I think 2 is good.
2 and then quali.
That's my controversial opinion of the week.
I mean, I don't know. It especially with adding, MotoGP and the talks of Super Formula wanting to do a weekend at the same time as Formula One.
Yeah.
In Suzuka.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I think the possibility of, chopping one practice off, moving qualifying into that time slot, giving, Super Formula MotoGP.
You could also make qualifying its own day.
You could
do 2 practice sessions on a Friday.
Then have
qualifying one day, race one day.
Yeah, and then that would allow either, a Formula 1 Academy race, Formula 2 race, MotoGP race to happen in the same weekend without drawing, one crowd for another crowd. I think if you're wanting to just make it as a racing oriented weekend, that would be a really cool possibility. I don't think people will want that though. That's just because of the idea.
I know what I
combining
want.
them.
I know I am not the majority. So I think that's fair.
Good way of stating it.
I'm not the majority.
Saw something about the point system for the idea of, switching it down. The proposed point system that I saw is that they're talking about giving points all the way down to P20, which...
No.
I say no just because in the idea of Andretti joining potentially, they're just going to have to change the point system again because now you have 2 drivers that aren't getting points.
If you've seen, so the one that I get is IndyCar. Those go all the way down to the last place. Everybody scores points. It is so unbelievably confusing. It's so bad.
Why?
Just don't.
Can I ask why?
Well, I guess IndyCar's different. Just in the sense that, let's say on the Indy 500 weekend, you'll get a point for leading a lap. You'll get a point for qualifying in the top 6. You'll get a point for, winning the race, obviously, all that stuff. There's just so many different ways to score points on top of finishing position that it's a cluster.
All right. I can see why this would be a pain for you, especially.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it for so long.
Yeah. I also think the point system I don't want to say the rally point system, because even the rally point system is mad confusing. So
But for just the main point system, though, like just the Sunday.
But then, yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I feel like give 2/3 points, and that's how you go.
Like to 15-ish.
Like almost a MotoGP point system because they go down to P15.
Do P14 because you have an even number of cars, and then you would see Alpine, Haas, V-Carb, Stake, Sauber, F1,
Maybe even a Williams.
Maybe even a Williams points. You can never know.
I did not mean to put that accent on.
But that kind of wraps up the news section. There wasn't actually too much news.
A ton of news.
It was a lot of just Red Bull news about HP and
But funny enough, what I didn't expect was the Miami race weekend to convey so much. I think this was arguably the best weekend of the year so far.
I think it was arguably one of the best weekends of the year. I also feel like the just overall track kind of energy was very, very high compared
I think it's the best it's ever looked at Miami.
Yes, I can 100% agree with that. I would never dishearten the Japanese fans because
they're amazing.
My God,
y'all are so amazing.
We will never amount to what you guys do at your races, but we can only plea and hope that American sports environments can mirror Europe's more.
Yo, I swear we were not the people who asked for 3 races. Don't get mad at us.
We don't even want the 4th one, even if it's coming to our hometown. We just want it to go.
I don't want a 4th one.
I don't want a 4th one.
Please back to Germany. All right, I'm done.
Let's move actually into the race this week. I'll let you take the first point because there's only one thing to say. Hold on.
I got you. Tiny bit of pre-race news. I'm so sorry, you guys. Daniel Ricciardo, subject for a 3-place grid penalty for his infringement on the safety car during the Chinese GP. So I know it sucked because in China he had such a good race weekend, except for that one tiny mistake that Logan Sargent also made. He didn't get a grid drop for it, but
that's something else we're going to talk about later. It's the FIA.
But yeah, Ricciardo was booted down 3 points in GP qualifying, regardless of where he qualified.
So he qualified P17, P6,
P18, P17.
Yeah, P18.
Drop to the back.
Oh, well, what are you going to do? He made up for that in the sprint, though, so we'll talk about that after practice. But
absolutely.
You didn't have too much that happen. Both Alpines were in the top 10, and it was more, just like you said,
prepping for the sprint.
Absolutely. They weren't really trying to get as much data like they usually do. They were just trying to get ready for the sprint race.
The sprint weekend, that sprint section is the data.
Yes, absolutely. Leclerc brought out the red flag during this, absolutely giving the HP their logo placement money, just right in the middle of the track.
It was such an uncharacteristic section to spin in and kind of just blocks the entire track. It was so funny.
So the one thing I saw was the evergreen in the Suez Canal.
Yes, it was literally like the evergreen blocking the Suez Canal.
It's so goofy.
And I don't know why he actually wasn't able to get out of there.
I think he just didn't have space to I think he had to make a 20-point turn.
But I also thought he might have lost drive as well. But I think that was discounted.
Well, we can only theorize.
It was a perfect bad spin.
Some would say an incident.
Under race.
Otherwise, that was it for practice. There was not
nothing
much.
Crazy.
Then we got to the sprint qualifying, which, oh boy.
I thought it was kind of a banger.
I thought so too. You had obviously Danny Rick qualifying in P4. Everyone thought that he was back for, his Miami special.
And he was.
He was until the actual race. The Aston Martins were abysmal this week. Overall, just not there with race pace at all. You pointed that out both days.
I don't know. Sprint qualifying wise, they were better. They both were in the top 10. Lance Stroll actually out-qualified Fernando in both sprint and GP qualifying, which I thought was really interesting. And then you also had Logan Sargent out of nowhere out qualifying Alex Albon for the first time at his home race.
Yes, that one was
amazing. I was happy. I was happy for the kid.
We all were, and especially with all the news about Logan
and his future, all that kind of stuff.
Seeing him just get that little win means so much to him. I can imagine that already. Sprint race was
amazing.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Amazing.
It was the precursor to the weekend. During the start of the race, you had Lewis doing his greatest Senna impression, sending it down the inside and making contact with both Aston Martins and sending our boy Lando off and retiring in 30 seconds.
Which was incredible. Like, the gap was open, but
he went for the gap, and then it no longer existed.
In the sense, I guess, it's a gap that, I guess, on corner exit, you're not getting anything out of.
No.
You're going to get cut off by the 3 wide that's on your left. It doesn't make any sense.
Going into the first apex, absolutely. There's no way that
you are trying to take somebody out in that section.
So that threw everyone to a start. And after that, Lando crossed the track while it was still racing. No one was obviously around him. He was not hurt.
Yeah.
But because of this and the FIA's rules, he was given a €50,000 fine, but half of it was suspended because logically that's the only thing he could have done in that situation. So they only
say, what is he going to do? Just
stand there waiting for someone to pick him up. That seems way safer. So they suspended half of it, which respectable.
That's fair.
That's very fair. Then we get to the actual first person. Yeah, the first person who we can actually use this sound bit. We had K-Mag just really
decided to be a terrorist.
Yeah, Max said it best. He was just deciding to be a terrorist with the way that.
But he was fighting for what was right.
He was fighting for something. He was fighting for points, and as a Haas driver, that's what you want to be fighting for.
May have been dirty, but some of the greatest defense I have ever seen in Formula One. I don't care that it was penalty ridden or whatever. That was so amazing to watch. Just like putting literally his neck on the line for his team, taking 10-second penalty after 10-second penalty after 5-second penalty, just so Nico could stay in the points. It was
crazy.
Amazing.
Sacrificing his race, like you said, sacrificing his super license points and his reputation around the grid for the benefit of the team is way more than you can ask for a driver.
Thankfully.
Jesus.
Whoa.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do we have a third person in this podcast?
No, we're gonna.
Jesus.
Thankfully, on the reputation portion, he kind of regained that after the race and the post-race interviews.
Did.
He came out and was fully honest in the fact, I did this, I deserve this, but I did it for the team. And Lewis Hamilton, his ultimate enemy in all of this, also came out, and I gained so much respect for Lewis in the sense that Lewis came out and was like, you know, I really, really respect this guy for just sitting down, taking the blame, doing what he has to do for his team. Because Lewis is not in a position where he has to do something like this week in and week out. K-Mag did everything he had to do. And I feel like aside from Lewis, the whole grid kind of respected him for it.
Oh, you're done. That's your talking point. I thought you were going to keep going. I didn't know you were just going to end
my
it there.
voice will be fully gone and you'll lose me.
I figured.
I'll just walk up and leave.
Let that sink in. Overall, I mean, honesty is kind of this talking point of the weekend, I would say. You had Lewis speaking super highly of K-Mag just with his honesty. K-Mag obviously stayed with the stewards most of Saturday after the sprint race. Just, you know, I guess I'm going to assume that he was just taking the punishment that he was getting.
Of course.
Not in an innuendo of any sort. Overall, I mean, you had him speaking super highly. You had K-Mag just being like, yep, I had to do what I had to do. And we talked about this off the pod, but like, if he doesn't do that, he's just going to be the villain of the grid.
He's also pushing up his stock for next year to stay at Haas.
He is very much pushing up his stock. That is a very good point.
Like, personally, I would want to keep him.
Yeah.
I would want to keep him right now.
After that, yes. Sticking with honesty for a second, Alonso broke his silence, I guess you would say, on how Lewis didn't get a penalty on the first action of the race, or of the sprint race.
Of the sprint race, yeah.
And he straight up said that I think it's because he's not Spanish that he's not getting a penalty, which, coming from not only the most experienced F1 driver of all time, but also someone who has had his fair share of good moments and bad moments with the FIA.
Yeah.
That statement means a lot. And that statement is going to really be something that he is going to want to talk about the FIA with. He's going to be meeting them with in the future to talk about nationality basis.
I was going to say, there's always been the
British
bias, mafia for, favoring Mercedes or whatever. I think I'm very proud and I have a lot of respect for Fernando about just going up and saying something about this, because we can't do it.
We can't.
It has to be somebody who's driving.
Yeah, and the idea of it's him doing it, who is in the last 5 races been slapped around with weirdly strict punishments,
horrible stuff,
but then
China.
not getting punished at all for something. Even after I was watching the pre-sprint race show, and they were talking, and I believe two of those announcers were making jabs at the FIA and not being consistent overall,
because they're not.
No,
they never have been.
That's something that, as a fan, does make me mad, just in the fact of,
because it should be cut and dry.
It should be.
That's how it is in any other sport. You have mishaps. You always have mishaps.
You have mishaps. You have things that just happen that
but I
are
feel
unexplainable.
I feel like it happens more in F1 than any discretion of sporting that I've ever watched.
I absolutely agree. It's ridiculous. I think we're going to take a short 5-minute break, let Oliver kind of recoup his voice before we get into the race and qualifying period.
Drink some water.
Yeah, Oliver's going to drink some water and breathe. But we'll be right back, guys.
Thanks,
y'all. Don't go anywhere. I don't want to just hard cut this, but I'm going to cut this out. Anyways. Whoop. All right. I put on a hat. Oliver had some water.
I look the same.
Sound the same too.
Nice.
Heyo.
All
right. Moving on from where we left off for our short little break, we have qualifying, which was kind of lackluster compared to the sprint, but
I'll say it wasn't anything too crazy. My big point that I took away, and I only got to see the first 2 segments. I had to go to work after. But Verstappen looked really off the pace in qualifying. And then, I go to work, do my stuff. I come home. Verstappen's taken pole position by a tenth and a half. Didn't even do a second. Well, he did a second flying lap. Didn't improve, and he still got it. It was depressing. I was hyped. It's like, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to see Leclerc on pole position when I get home. No,
but you had Charles on
P2. He's on the front row,
so
I'm happy.
Especially in Miami, P2 is a good spot. You also had Aston's nowhere pace, so
neither of them made it into Q3. It was
that's
horrible.
unlike Fernando, especially at this track.
I was gonna say, you had Fernando getting knocked out in Q1, and then you had Stroll getting knocked out in Q2. It was awful.
Ridiculous. Moving on to the actual race, which is where things get pretty juicy here.
Lot picks up.
Former President Donald Trump visited the McLaren garage. You had Jalen Ramsey give out the 3rd place trophy to Charles, and you also had Kevin Durant in the Aston Martin, as long as a lot of other celebrities at the grid.
You had Lando's #1 fan, Jimmy Butler.
Yes, I totally forgot about that.
Up in the paddock with his McLaren Lando tatted
his
shirt.
His literal drew on Lando McLaren shirt, which I'm going to go in a little rant.
I was going to say, it was a fun fact for me to find out this week.
During one of the first, I think it was Lando's first Miami GP, or maybe when he was still a reserve driver, but he took...
No, it would have been his first one.
Yeah. He took Jimmy Butler on a hot lap around the track. And if you haven't seen the video, it's really entertaining. Jimmy Butler's screaming like a little girl to stop and slow down. It's pretty
For those
funny.
who don't know, Jimmy Butler is a basketball player for the Miami Heat.
He was from Chicago as well. Played in Chicago, not from Chicago, but really famous player, really good player. And he's one of Lando's biggest supporters. So he was very happy this weekend overall.
Yeah.
We can definitely conclude that.
Oh, I know he was very happy after what transpired in this race.
After all those celebrities, as the famous Brundle quote says, fake an interest in F1, which I don't think any of these celebrities actually were faking an interest. I think all of them somewhat cared about the sport.
Some of them did. Camilla Cabello, she was all over.
She was in the
TVs.
Ferrari. Yeah,
I don't
Lisa
know.
was the final
Flag.
I don't know who that is.
I don't know
too.
who that is either.
Was,
just no surname, just Lisa bearing the flag.
it was entertaining, but you had the actual start of the race happen, and
with no incident,
except
no contact. Let's say no contact.
You had
Decided to be a terrorist.
Jeez, I fumbled that so hard.
Okay, I know the Osama bin Russell came in there, but that is not where we're going for today.
No, that was not what we're going for. He did nothing wrong. It was Sergio Perez that tried to assassinate the first three on the grid, and was a really weird kind of
crazy
dive,
Lewis-esque dive.
But like that wasn't even the part that threw me off. It was the fact that
it's more that he got just shot through the entire
Sainz, like Charles got a terrible start. Sainz overtakes him, gets piece 2. And then you had Oscar overtake Norris. That was the way P5 was when Checo went out. Checo comes back in right behind Oscar and Lando. Lando gets pushed back behind Checo, who's already at a weird slow pace because of
Carlos gets screwed over by it as well, and Charles re-overtakes him because Sergio's just pushed half of the top 6 off the track.
Essentially, you have just a weird reshuffle of the first 6.
Except Max.
Except for Max, yep, he was in the lead. But my bad. But we had things like the question of, okay, now what happens here? Because now we have, a separate drivetrain almost between the front 7.
We went from Red Bull, Ferrari to Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren.
And it wasn't
Ferrari, Red
and
Bull,
it
McLaren.
wasn't Lando. It was Oscar that was putting on the pressure early on.
And he was really good in the first half of this race.
First 3 laps, I think, were all his fastest laps.
Yeah, and he was keeping the gap with Max at like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
For the first like 20 laps. Like this wasn't like first 5 laps of the race.
And then
it was
Max
a long
is gone.
time.
Yeah, Max never really took off.
I think Max's biggest gap all race
was 7 seconds.
was was like 5.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other cars looked really good this weekend.
Yeah, McLaren definitely had those upgrades. Definitely came in handy
this weekend,
obviously,
for sure.
Ferrari looked pretty good, but definitely was the 3rd best car out there this weekend. I would say.
I agree.
I mean, you could argue that the McLaren was probably a better car than the Red Bull this weekend, just with overall finish and pace. I mean, you had what happened to Oscar at the end, but that's obviously not his fault.
That's Carlos.
But
no, about halfway through the race,
yeah,
we had this very strange incident with. Oh yeah. Before that, I forgot.
I was gonna say we were skipping something important. First half of the race was boring as hell, and then Max was like, "Screw this! I'm taking the chicane the straight way, killing the pylon, and bringing it onto the center of the track." Now, Oliver and I didn't see this clip happen, and then we just see this, what we thought was a can.
I was like, "Who chucked a Budweiser onto the track? What is happening?"
Which is probably unheard of for some fans of countries, but
it's an American beer.
Well, not the I was more so saying throwing stuff on the field or like the track. Like that's definitely an American thing to do.
I'm not a fan of.
I am not either, especially in F1. It's not safe. But
it works.
The cone, the pylon, whatever it is,
from a distance.
Yeah, from a distance, definitely looked like a can. But we were just super confused by it. We thought it was hilarious that
because
this was
they kept going like, "Oh, we need to bring out a VSC or a safety car for this." I'm like, "Why are we bringing out a safety car for a Budweiser?"
For a spill on aisle 7.
And then they finally show the replay like 3 minutes later, and Max just kills the pylon. Sorry,
there was no snakes killed in this race. I'm like,
maybe some alligators.
Maybe. But after this brought out the VSC, slows down the pace back together.
Most of the pit stops during the VSC were all
in the back because of just where the VSC started.
Absolutely. So Max and Lando and Oscar weren't able to benefit from that. I think it was
the top four. I think it was Charles, both McLarens, and Max that didn't get a pit.
Yeah.
And that resulted in them just getting a lead ahead because of them not pitting and all the other teams pitting under the VSC. Yes. Within a lap, it's drawn back in, race pace resumes. But this is where, I'll let you say it if you have energy.
Good fortune came for them eventually. Our star of Saturday, Kevin Magnussen, decided to be the villain and killed Logan Sargent at his home race. Mm-hmm. I'll let you go into how that happened, but...
So they were... Oh, God, how is this? K-Mag's coming up behind him around the...
T1, T2, T3.
Quick 3-turn corner. Logan has a really good line. He's not hitting the curbs at all. He's playing it safe on the apexes. K-Mag takes the inside line, tries to reveal space, forcing Logan to make a wider line, but Logan doesn't take that wider line.
Because he's so far ahead already.
The two can collide and spin out. Logan's retired.
Logan gets thrown into the wall, destroys his rear wing. The back right tire, the suspension's fully broken. K-Mag just gets a little broken front wing and a spin.
Spins around, starts back racing again. And right while this was happening, Lando came over the radio and said, we have Checo in P5 behind us, but right now we need to be pushing signs in P4. P3, I believe this was during this time. And I think personally that this was like the hell with Checo. He sabotaged himself.
This was his moment.
But this was one of the moments that set him out as someone who could actually win this race. And him saying, let's push the cars in front. Let's not play defense. I think that was the smartest play of the day from him.
For sure. I feel like for me, after the start, I was like, okay, this is awesome. He can definitely get back onto the podium. Mm-hmm. And then you had that very fortunate safety car came out and really, really benefited him.
The safety car, everyone pitted except for him. He stays out for another lap, which results in him being the only car in front of the safety car. And obviously the safety car's out, so it can only go a certain speed because it's not an F1 car. It's an AMG Mercedes, I believe.
Yep.
And that resulted in this weird situation for about a lap and a half where Lando's 35 seconds ahead of the rest of the pack. Yeah. And if he caught up to the back of the pack, that means he's a lap ahead. Overall, I think they get to the backhand straight on sector 3.
Yeah.
And the car just kind of pulls to the right, lets everyone swing through. Everyone starts gunning it back to Lando.
Yep.
They do another lap around the safety car. Safety car comes in. You get the lap restart. And this is where I think the second part of Lando's luck really kind of shining through today. I don't want to say luck because he definitely earned this too. But he was really slow on the safety car restart. I don't know.
I was going to say that. I was nervous.
A lot of people were saying, I remember seeing the time that Max was almost half a car behind him almost. He kind of swung in.
Max did his classic nudge through the apex.
Try to push through and get that jump ahead earlier, forcing Lando. But Lando really stayed calm, waited until he wanted to go, which was really close. It was after the pit entrance.
It was at the pit entrance,
and
which is where he really chose, let's go 100% now.
Yeah, he lets go. Max has a great jump on him. Gets in to 2/1000ths of a second behind him, and he just locks up a little bit in the back, slides, takes a really wide turn, and just gets barely out of DRS.
And Lando runs.
Lando just runs with this because
he had about an 8-9 lap tire advantage over Max.
That's true. And I pointed this out while we were watching it, but because of that time of during the safety car, Lando's tires warmed up. Because he's not running at Delta pace. He's running at, a slower race pace, I would say.
Yeah.
Probably 60% race pace just because I don't know, you're not trying to catch the cars ahead. You're not slowing down to catch the cars behind you. You're just waiting.
You're managing and waiting.
So yeah, I was to say, you're just managing what you have. And for him, those were brand new hards that were really, really cold. But during those 2 laps, they got up perfectly to temperature.
Yeah.
And it did help Oscar too, because his mediums were really hot. They were getting
they warm up easier than the hards.
They do.
The safety car.
But his tires got to cool down, which allowed him to use those tires for about 6-7 more laps. That was a huge thing with McLaren, was just the overall strategy. And, you know, during the broadcast that we watched, they called Zach Brown twice, once in the beginning, once towards the end. And he said, like, the question was posed to him where it's like, which simulation had Oscar leading this race?
Yeah.
And he was like, Oscar's simulation did. And then, like, 30 laps later, it's like, so did Oscar's simulation have Lando leading this race too? And he's like, nope, that was all Lando's simulation. It was just a funny little bit.
It was.
But
and I think the other thing that helped Lando out a lot at the restart was the fact that Charles had a really good restart and was able to stay in the DRS of Max and fight Max.
I was going to say, that was a huge thing, was Max wasn't really just fighting for Lando. He was fighting off Charles behind him as well. Excuse me. Jesus.
Bless you. But yeah, and since Lando was able to break out of that DRS, Max was playing defense for the rest of the race, essentially.
And, we'll get to it towards the end, but Oscar started slipping through. He had a bad, he had a little pit damage. He had a little wing damage.
Because of Carlos trying to overtake him.
Oh, we forgot about this bit.
I was furious. Actually.
We were really annoyed by Carlos today, and
Dad, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, sorry,
I know
Mr.
Carlos
Ward
is your number 1, number 2 driver, but this was not his day.
And the way that he was acting on the radio, I can only say was pretty Lewis-esque.
Ferrari and Carlos were asking for Oscar to let him back through
for something that was classified as hard racing, not a penalty, not an incident.
Yeah.
Just good racing that people are doing.
And Carlos said, all right, if they're not going to let me back through, I'll do it myself. And decided to.
For 4 laps, he was just like, he locked up majorly on one of them. He got within centimeters behind the diffuser of the McLaren.
And then just decided to destroy his front wing on a full send. And it killed Oscar's race.
And Oscar obviously was one of the best drivers of today. He didn't get driver of the day, obviously, just with the standings that happened. But honestly, that's how you say that word. It seems like he was the best driver on the grid today. Just overall with talent
I
and
think it's
speed.
fair sentiment.
He was the fastest driver. He had the fastest lap. He was the first one to break a 131 today. You pointed that out to me, when I was very excited that was going to be broken. But it just kind of broke a lot of the grid up and led Lando to just kind of gain more and more time every lap.
I was going to say, it was so exciting to see not Lando, let's say, managing the gap between him and Max, but actually building one.
Yes.
It's so refreshing to see a non-Red Bull driver build a gap at the front. It could have been anybody besides Max or Sergio, and I'm cheering. It could have been Esteban Ocon, and I would have been cheering.
I was going to have you keep talking so I could pull up something. But
no, on top of that, obviously when we get to the end of the race, Lando, after 3 years since Russia 2021, his first real chance at a race win is finally a race winner. And that was like very euphoric for me, I guess. I've been waiting for him to avenge that moment for a really long time. It was the first time we heard the British national anthem on the podium since 2022, Brazil with George Russell, which is too old for you to know live, but it was so refreshing. And we have Raven bringing up Lando's
we're not going to watch
toast.
it yet because I need to rant about what happened to Oliver and I when we were trying to watch it.
Oh, yes.
Oh, man, that made me so mad. But we still have some racing to talk about still. Lando hasn't won the race yet.
Okay, I'm sorry about spoiling everything for everybody. Yes, Lando won the race.
Lando won the race, guys.
My apologies.
Crazy, I know. Yes, Lando wins, and not only did he win like fair and just wholehearted racing without, someone throwing it away or him messing up in Sochi. But overall, a lot of people were doubting him for going to win. He finally proved that he is able to do it.
Finally got rid of the name Lando NoWins.
Mm-hmm. That's a big one for him. And Oliver and I, McLaren's not our number one teams. But he's wearing that. I was wearing my McLaren hoodie today.
I did buy the McLaren Miami bucket hat.
He did buy the bucket hat.
I'm a fan of the papaya. You cannot hate on them.
You can't.
They have so much history in the sport.
I'm going to say,
I'm a Williams fan,
I was going to say, the Seb quote goes for every team. You have to appreciate all the teams to really love the sport. But
I agree.
You can have your favorite team, obviously.
Dude,
mine was
also,
nowhere to be found this weekend.
But it's also just be happy for a dude who's been fighting for this for so many years.
That's been so deserving of it too. Just absolutely, and not doing the switching teams, hoping to win somewhere else.
He's been loyal.
He's been stuck with McLaren for.
He debuted there. He debuted there in 2019. So this is his sixth season
year.
with McLaren.
You can't blame him for that. And so Oliver and I were like, okay, we got to watch the post game now, the post race, just because
I need to hear the anthem.
I want to hear the anthem.
See the entire podium celebration.
I want to hear the podium celebration. I want to hear the comms of him seeing the team, seeing him jump on all the mechanics and being raised, and, crowd surfing them. That was awesome. Him seeing all the other drivers and all the drivers pulling up next to him and waving.
Every driver was so happy for him.
Fernando was one of the first people. It was obviously you had Max and Charles because they parked for me, and then
you had Fernando, Esteban,
George,
Carlos, of course,
obviously, and then Jensen Button interviewed him, and that we can't say the quote, but
it was so
good. How do you feel to be a race winner?
F slur, yeah.
So I don't know. You got to be happy for him. And Oliver and I started watching the celebration, and it's okay.
We're gonna get to see that classic.
We all know the Lando smashed the bottle and sprays everywhere. And so, he gets the trophy first. He throws it up in the air.
Yeah,
that was super exciting.
Catapults it in the air.
Oh, that was great. Just great energy from the young one. And then, we hear the British national anthem. Beautiful moment. My first time hearing it as an F1 fan. Then you have Max and Charles pop their bottles immediately.
Just start dunking it on him.
Spraying him, dunking it down his shirt. And then it cuts to a Mercedes advertisement for ABC and ESPN.
Thank you so much for watching this coverage of the Miami GP.
Words cannot describe how mad.
We still have not seen it.
That's why I pulled it up, because I want to watch it with the viewers and get an actual reaction. But oh my God,
we were so
this
mad.
Was so infuriating to me.
Another reason why my voice is gone.
But
I've been waiting for this.
Is let me get the audio. What a pop. What a pop. Let's watch it again with audio real quick.
I love that idea.
Gotta unmute the site because I'm the producer of every show. Oh, and it's got a little. Look at them waiting in the background. Oh, yeah. That was a banger.
Also,
that's a banger.
The hats were so nice. Typically, you get the black.
I was just say last year you had the gray.
Hats.
You had the gray. What's it called? The gray Miami GP hats, which one of my coworkers had. Just wore it the other day, and I've never seen him wear it before, and that was funny.
Yeah.
But these hats just look so much better, and I feel
love
like that's
the palm
something.
Trees.
I think that a lot of tracks are gonna start doing something like this. Not obviously they all have their basic merch, but I feel like they're gonna make it have a little bit of design, have a little bit of color that really.
These headlines are great.
Oliver's pointing out a no more Lando Norris. So
absolutely beautiful.
But that, as much as that pissed me off not watching that live, that was really cool to see. I'm not gonna lie. And the blue race suits of Ferrari,
minus the HP logos.
Beautiful. But can't be mad.
HP's
a good brand for the most part. Then, now, moving on to
your
our favorite segment
that we do every week.
which
It's going to be a toughie for me.
as I say, we're not going to speed through it because there is some context that are needed for a few of these points, and because Oliver's voice cannot be strained any more than it already is. So we will be taking this at normal speed. I'll still play the music. I don't care.
Absolutely.
It's our show. Starting off, you have Lando winning his race.
I say the
Congrats.
same thing to my dog. My
That is
dog
your dog's
Lando.
name. And
Funny
next-
enough, at the end of the race, the podium celebration, or in the cool down
the
room,
Max Verstappen podcast, as
Max-
it's like to be called.
Max gets to see K-Mag and Logan Sargent come together.
For the
and his
first time.
reaction to the crash was, wow, thank God Williams has a spare chassis for him this time.
And the fact
I was crying.
both of us found that hilarious. But Charles and Lando just are like, yeah. Like that's something that's already been said before
Yeah.
around the paddock. That was great. Then we have Kevin Magnussen's defense, not his offense. His defense was in our top
And that
five.
sprint race was amazing, like we said already.
We had the legend of Guido coming out for the Ferrari pit stop crew with a sub 2 second. That was one of 2 sub 2 second pit stops this race with
The Red Bulls always get him, though.
They always do.
Ferrari,
Ferrari, not as much.
not as much.
Then we got the tractors getting their first points of the year. Congrats to them.
With SD Bestie.
They have 1 point and are now in a 7th place. 7th place. Nope.
8th place,
Nope. There's 2 teams that don't have points.
which puts them in 8th.
Cool.
I love how the music cut out right now.
that was great. We're gonna send it again for the not 5. A little quieter this time. though.
And for the not 5.
We have Carlos complaining like Lewis. Charles didn't. He was real quiet today. I'm not. Gonna
Carlos
lie.
was acting like a baby,
He was.
and I was not a fan.
We were not a fan of him complaining for multiple laps and then wanting to just commit genocide against the
Oscar's front wing.
Yeah. Then we have in our second not 5 point, Daniel Ricciardo's second half performance of the weekend. He snagged P4 during the sprint.
Which I was very proud of.
Absolutely. Everyone thought he was going to be back. Everyone thought Miami was going to be great for him.
Apparently,
And
on his
then,
last lap in qualifying, he had no grip on actual GP qualifying.
Mm-hmm.
So qualified 18th, got booted all the way to the back. You can't do anything from there.
Nope. And he tried his best, but even then, he was getting some little battles with Oscar and some of the back of the grid.
Which was fun.
Then we have K-Mag's overall offense this weekend.
My goodness.
Jesus. Then we have Logan
Show 'em on the
Sargent.
defense.
I'm going to stop the music for this one because this one's a little
I
sentimental.
feel bad.
We just feel bad for the guy. It was his home race. It wasn't his fault.
He was
And
driving a good race.
Yeah, he was driving well.
He finished P10 in the sprint. I mean, I know that's not points, but it's a top 10 finish.
It's a top 10 finish, and that's something he can always hold in his home race.
Yeah.
Um,
Just to get taken out like that, when
especially
you're
with all
under
this
the
pressure. Yeah, the
It's-
pressure is so tough for him right now. Williams, Fowles has come out and said that they don't want to get, they're not in any position or thinking about moving him, but
Yeah.
how much of that can we really believe?
You can't believe anything in F1.
And then you have Sergio Perez's quote unquote desperate start at trying to win this race.
Yeah, I thought you saw what Lewis did last week. So why, not last week, yesterday, why try and replicate the exact same thing today? And it ruined his race. It literally
quite
ruined his
literally
race
ruined
because his
his
race
race.
pace was horrible.
I think he damaged the car somehow. To some degree, there was something wrong.
Maybe his ego.
That's a huge part of the car. Then moving to F2, there was no F2.
No F2 this week.
Rally. We have Rally Day Portugal in just over 3 days. We have a lot of non-F1
So
racing
we're going to
this
have a
weekend.
lot of discretions next week
So
to cover our off
it's
week.
going to be an exciting off week for us, but maybe not for all the F1 fans out there.
I was gonna say,
That's
if you're
okay.
just a fan of racing, period, you guys will love next week.
We got 3 different kinds of racing, and all of them are going to be super exciting. Then moving on to WEC, we have Spa on Thursday is the start of it, and then the actual race is Sunday
morning.
But this is some news from the Spa. You have the 2 Peugeot drivers will be participating in Formula E during the 6 hours of Spa, causing both hypercars of the team to only have 2 drivers total, meaning that they will each have to have 3-hour shifts instead of the traditional 2-hour shifts. So
imagine that happening during Le Mans as well. Like,
you're driving for 12 hours now?
yeah.
Gee, no, I genuinely don't think they would.
No, of course
that's
not.
like
It's
a huge
6-hour race. They wouldn't do that. But it's just surprising.
Yeah, no, thanks, Oliver. I was talking about the
All right.
fact that driving for 12 hours was
Oh, I
going to
know.
be. I'm not. Brother, we're
I'm
fighting
sorry.
like a married couple.
As we do.
Yeah. MotoGP is the other one that's happening. We have France happening in 3 days. That's very exciting. And then for our American listeners and anyone
A true
else,
American race.
the OG
So
race,
sorry.
the OG American racing. No, we had the Kentucky Derby, which it's the 150th Kentucky Derby. That's a huge milestone in itself. So that's cool. I didn't get to watch it live. I really wish I did. I usually watch it with my family most of the years when I was growing up.
I did at work, and my goodness,
It
there
was
so
exciting.
much screaming.
Yeah, because money is on the line. I learned that you can also not bet off track on horse betting in Illinois. You have to be at a track or a actual
Interesting.
betting house. So, yeah, that was crazy. But you had Mystic Dan taking the win as an 18-1 odds horse, which is not a favorite, but not
No, that's
the least
far
favorite.
from. It's right in the middle.
I was going to say, pretty middle of the pack kind of odds. After the first photo finish since 1996 at the Derby, and the first 3-horse finish since 1947. So if you weren't excited by, quote, winning the race by a flared nostril, I don't know.
Been almost 80 years
Yeah.
since we've seen this.
And Oliver, you pointed this out to me, but it's like we were just watching the highlights together, and you were like, God, this was really exciting, even though I don't know anything about horse racing.
All forms of racing are exciting.
100%.
I love it.
As long as you're into the sport and like you can, I don't want to say
If you're
understand the
into what makes-
nuances.
no, not even that. It's just if you're into what makes racing.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great way of putting it. And that kind of is going to wrap it up for us here this week on the gravel. But I just wanted to say thank you guys for letting us just ramble and Oliver try to ramble into the
Cough.
microphone. I would like to just shout out the other shows on this network that we call home. We have Good Morning Hockey that comes out every day during the week. We are into the Stanley Cup. I am the producer of that show 3 days of the week. Brendan, our other producer, is going to be opening up his new show. I believe in 2 weeks is when we're going to start uploading that show. That one's going to be called Listen to Commands. It's a really cool weightlifting, powerlifting. They're not just going to be talking about sports kind of like how we do, but they're going to be, interviewing a lot of coaches, talking about a lot of stuff that's going up to date, and just kind of giving their 2 cents on the race, on the lifting and like fitness world. And it's really, really good. We've listened to it. And I just want to shout out our boy Brendan. So
He's doing big money
He's
things.
doing big money things. We're really excited for them to come out on that. Other than that, we will be back next week here on the gravel. Please rate 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcasts and like and subscribe on the YouTube. Do not message me like Tassos doxed me on Friday. You can leave comments either on our Alithio Instagram.
Oh, I thought you were going to dox me too.
No, I'm not going to dox you too. You can leave comments at Alithio Instagram or on the Alithio YouTube where we post our content on the channel. I would like to get more listeners in feedback. Yeah. Not only feedback, but if we got anything wrong, if we missed anything that you want to talk about.
Want to see us
anything,
do.
Yeah, anything you want to see us do, talk to, please.
Personally, I really, really want to improve this. Not just for myself, but for you guys as a listening spectacle.
And for us right now, I'm graduating school here in 6 weeks now. It's weird to say, but definitely going to be able to give more time, more effort. We're going to be improving not only the camera quality, we're going to be improving this space. We're going to be changing things. It's going to be fun. We're going to get some cool people on to interview. Not too long, hopefully. This off season, during this summer break, we'll definitely be hitting up a bunch of people to try to get some interviews. And then hopefully one of these races, you might not get an episode right away, but you will get some
might get
actual
a fully edited video.
I was going to say, you might
us.
get actual YouTube content of us in Europe at a race, talking to people like you, which would be amazing. So I just wanted to say thank you guys. I wanted to say,
Appreciate y'all.
please give us the opportunity to just kind of connect with the fans while we're still super small, and then we can build something really, really cool. That's what we want to do here at Alethio. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up. That's going to wrap it up. Please, I already said rate 5 stars. You can subscribe to the YouTube right here. You can check out our last video right here. And yeah, that's going to be it for us on the gravel. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for bearing with me, y'all.